quickly going to talk about what the plans are going forward, the sort of key takeaways. As Katie was saying, a really important part of these projects is that you continue to build on what's been learned. You try and develop the ideas further. And certainly, I know with Cybermoor, we've been working on these projects for the past 20 years. It's always a challenge to try and keep things going, but it's often really valuable. So I suppose we've had a really promising start on the 5G journey. As you've heard, we've built networks, we've gone out, we've put masts up, we've actually installed equipment in some really quite difficult and hard to reach areas. And we've also gone out and we've developed the apps for the rural tourists to use. We've come up with new services, and we know those are being used at the moment. And we see that over the next couple of years, the North Pennines AONB is going to build on that and do even more around those apps linked to their geopark status. And we've also, I think, opened the eyes for some of the farmers and tourism operators on different ways of working. So through the training sessions that Taryn mentioned that we've held with the tourism operators, they now understand a lot better how things like Google listings work. And they've also started to try and get a grasp on what they can do with these apps, how it can help to change potentially the way they do business. And I know last week there was a few members of the consortium. We were up in Northumberland, stood in a field with one of the sheep farmers who's taking part in the project. He was sat on his quad bike listening to some of the things we were doing. He was looking at the Blue Bear drones flying, and you could see his mind starting to work. How can we actually use this technology in different ways? So I think it's had one of the main impacts has been that tremendously talented groups of people that you've been listening to this afternoon. They've been bringing their great minds to bear on some of these really intractable rural problems that we're facing in the uplands, not just with farmers but also with the tourism sector. So it's been, for me, that's been one of the most heartening parts of the project, that we've been able to concentrate that resource in there and start to open people's eyes on new ways of doing things. We did some interim reports at the end of March this year. We're going to do final reports when the project wraps up at the end of September, and they'll be going out on the website at the end, towards the end of October. So we don't have them here today, but if you go on then, you'll be able to get quite detailed reports which go into the ins and outs of each one of the examples that you've heard today: the broadband, the tourism, the farming, the drones, but also looking about how we can further exploit the test bed that we've got there. So how do we bring more businesses in there to try and use the services? What are the interesting ideas that have cropped up, and how can they be how can they be tried out with on the 5G rural integrated test bed? So a really great start, but still a long way to go. We can't get complacent about the sort of rural connectivity. We've done some great stuff with 5G, but most people, we go out and do these talks, people say, yeah, but what about, I can't get a 3G signal. I'm in the field at the end of my farm. I can't make phone calls. What happens if my quad bike tips over? Ofcom last year said we've got about twice as many urban homes that can get 4G inside as rural homes. And we're seeing this sort of digital divide now. We're seeing 5G going into the cities with the mobile operators. We need to do what we can to try and help rural areas keep up. But potentially, if we can actually develop some of these use cases, some of these ideas, make them commercially viable, the stuff Katie was talking about, then that helps to make the case for the mobile operators and the communications providers that want to, they want to get involved in rural areas. It makes their job easier to go and justify it to their chief finance officers that this is actually going to be worth doing. But it's not going to be easy. As Katie said, we've got reticence from certain people in rural communities. You've got across the country. If you look at the petitions website on the UK that Parliament runs, there's a couple of anti-5G petitions. There's real hotspots in places like Cornwall and Pembrokeshire, which where people are really concerned about 5G. So it's about how we try and win over those hearts and minds. And the thing I find, suppose interesting about that is that those aren't the places that the mobile operators have got for the top of their list of places where they're going to put 5G, but there's still those concerns around it. So it's a case of how we communicate some of those benefits. The use cases you've heard about today are part of that, but it's part of having a much broader conversation with communities. We put the red letterbox at the front here. We've got 4 ideas out at the break. So there's one here. It's all about how we can actually use some of the low power capabilities of 5G, and it's not something that we've talked about a lot today. But one of the potential characteristics is that you could put a sensor about the size of that on a gate post or a drinking trough. The battery in it, because the power is very low, wouldn't need to be changed for 10 years. But that can be feeding back data on a regular basis about, has the gate been opened, has it been closed, the sort of stuff you were talking about with your magic ring. I'll choose my words more carefully next time. But it's those sorts of sensors that can be put all around farms and rural areas, monitoring how many tourists are passing through a gate potentially. Is a gate being opened in the middle of the night for someone to steal sheep or livestock? There's all these sorts of ideas which come into which we can start to bring into play as well. So if you've got any more ideas, feel free to put them in the red box. It's going to be there. I know some people tend to have better ideas when they've had a couple of drinks, so it's going to be here for the full duration of the next hour. So I suppose 5Grit's leading the way. Just before the civil servants leave, we need government and communications companies to try and lead the way on this. And I think with your 5G rural connected communities, it's a really good boost for the people in the room that want to do these ideas and sort of take them forward and develop them. And I know certainly we've got some ideas here. There'll be more ideas that come forward, which hopefully we can work with people to develop. So I suppose a quick one there. We are open on a sort of pay-as-you-play basis. So if you've got technologies that you want to trial out, then by all means come and speak to us about it. Before I wrap up, just want to say thank you to Lancaster University for hosting the event this afternoon, laying on all the food and everything. Colin's done a great job there, and as well thanks to all the speakers who've done a brilliant job explaining about what we've delivered on the project. And thank you for all coming along and giving us your time. I know it's very precious, but taking the time to sort of engage and try and learn about what we've done on the project. So I think a sort of closing message, and one that we think we started off on a technology project. How could we get all this kit to work in very challenging situations? I think we've realised that rural connectivity, it's much more important than the sort of commercial models or business plans or the type of box we put onto the side of someone's house or onto a mast. It's really around a sort of social challenge. And so the rallying call to everyone is, let's all try and work together to exploit the potential of 5G to make rural communities much fairer and more connected places to live.